afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in to this Facebook Live on our efforts to answer as many questions as possible related to our reopening plan for September. Yesterday, we had many questions that we were not able to get to in the time allotted. So over the night, we were able to put together some answers for you to those questions that we did not get to, and they are now posted on our website on our FAQs. There were some questions that were new, however, that came up, and we want to begin this session by responding to those questions. Also, there is a meeting tomorrow at 11 for all of our special ed parents. You should have received an invitation, a special email invite to that. You should have received an email invite to that meeting at 11 o'clock. So I will defer all of those special ed questions to tomorrow's meeting. So we're going to get right into some of our questions. Again, I want to provide you with a bit of an overview and just let you know that we are still working to address some of these issues and some of these questions. There is no perfect solution to some of the issues that many of our parents have raised, and our staff members for that matter. You know, there are some requests that we are receiving that are impossible to deliver. Besides the fact that they're not practical, some of the requests, frankly, are just not feasible for us to be able to do, cost notwithstanding, just the practicality of being able to implement some of these protocols and procedures is we're just not able to do. There's been requests, for example, to conduct testing on every student and every staff member in our district. We don't have the capacity to do that, nor do we have the ability to manage those kinds of costs. And that's just one example. There are other things beyond the scope of our influence regarding aftercare programs or before care programs for students. We do not have the resources to be able to provide those kinds of services. So those are just some examples of the kinds of issues that are before us. So I'm going to jump right in. Again, we have updated our FAQs, our frequently asked questions, on our district website. We've also provided updated information from the CDC to our website. The CDC released new information. There's two pieces of information that are added to our website. Both are from the CDC, one from August 10th and one from today, an update today, as recent as I think at 11 o'clock or 11:30 today. The CDC released new information that we've added to our website, and to the extent that that impacts our planning, we will also be making those adjustments accordingly. I've also been in contact with many of my colleagues throughout the region to see what other districts are doing, and we are comparing notes and trying to be as unified as we can. But there are some characteristics specific to certain districts that we have to take into consideration. And in that regard, we may not be able to do the same thing that some other districts are doing, or they may not be able to do some of the things that we are doing. For instance, there are some of my colleagues, for instance, they may only have 1,000 kids in their districts or 2,000 kids in their district. And so they're able to do certain things that we can't possibly do with over 7,000 students. There are many requests from staff, for instance, who are requesting accommodations because of pre-existing conditions. That number is quite high for our district because of its size. And so we have to take that into consideration. So with all that being said, let's just get right into some of our questions. Rick McCormick is with me this evening. He is the district clerk and helps us a lot with our public relations. So he's going to feed us some of those questions that are coming up on Facebook Live. Of course, Dr. Gorman, Deputy Superintendent, is with me, who spearheads most of our curriculum and technology initiatives in the district. So he and I will do our best to respond to some of your questions. The first question, I guess, Rick, I'm going to ask you if you will just kind of walk us through some of those questions that were new that were not added to our FAQs last night.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for inviting me to join you and Dr. Gorman. Good afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know, the FAQs are available on the website at www.mtvernoncsd.org/reopening FAQ. And all those questions at the end of these events are posted up there for your review. One of the questions that didn't get answered yesterday, sir, will there be after-school activities or care available to students in the district?
So we do not, and I think I responded to that already, we do not have resources for before or after care. After school activities, there are some activities depending on the organization, the entity that will be available in a distance learning or remote environment. But in terms of child care, we are not offering before or after child care services. We don't have the resources to be able to do that. And that's not a new question. That question has kind of come up even before COVID. We know that's a need in our community. We've looked at the feasibility of being able to provide that service, and hopefully at some point in the future, we will be able to do that at a cost to some of our parents, because we know our working parents need that as a resource.
Thank you. How about when will families be notified what model their students will be confirmed for September? And if a parent wants to change the model that they've signed up for through the survey, how can they do that?
Okay, so if you have, you won't be getting any notification because you are essentially approved, if you will, for whatever you selected. So if you requested totally remote, you are going to get a totally remote learning environment. If you've asked for a hybrid model, you will get the hybrid model. The one thing that we are monitoring more closely, however, is your opportunity to switch. So you can always switch from hybrid to remote. And of course, as we get to ideal class sizes in that remote environment, we will need to cap that. It is not as easy to switch from remote to hybrid. And the reason being, if my class, for example, has 25 students in it, and we're dividing that class in half, depending on the size of that room, it could be half, it could be a little more than half, it could be a little less than half. But effectively, if I am maxed out based on space in my classroom, and that room will only accommodate 12 children, and I already have 12 children, and 2 weeks down the line, someone opts out of remote learning and wants to go into the hybrid model, and my class is already at its capacity based on size, we will not be able to add to that. So going from remote to hybrid is a little more challenging and is not necessarily automatic. But if you're going from hybrid to remote, we will be able to honor that request.
Is the district currently accepting new students for pre-K? And is there a possibility they can enroll in CPSE?
Any student that is eligible for special services will always be eligible for special services. So that is not something that COVID or this environment that we're in influences. Pre-K is maxed out right now. In fact, we are making some limitations on our pre-K3 program because of budget cuts that we are either already experiencing or anticipating. So we will not be offering pre-K3, and our pre-K4 slots are already maxed out.
How much time will teachers be online for students who choose to enroll in the virtual learning program?
In our virtual learning program, it is a synchronized program, so teachers will be available the entire instructional day. Of course, there will be breaks scheduled in, and teachers will be working with their principals to create those schedules. And I want to talk a little more about that because that's one of the concerns that I know parents have. What is the schedule going to look like for my child? So let me give you a bit of a timeline. So last week, the governor, week before last now, the governor released these parameters for us, and we had to get our reopening plan submitted. You have to keep in mind that we have not had our teachers, because teachers are on recess right now, they're on summer break. So we have not been able to tell teachers, you have to complete your classroom schedules, you have to upload your lesson plans, you have to make this information available for teachers, to our families and our students, because we have not had them in the workplace. So we are working now to provide those templates so that when teachers do return, they will be able to get things up and moving. Our principals, of course, are available sporadically through the summer. They all have different vacation schedules, but to the extent that our principals are in contact with some of their teachers and giving them these guidelines, they are putting those schedules together. But for the teachers, for students that are in the virtual learning environment, it is a synchronized environment, and teachers are available all day long, just like they would be in the regular hybrid model or in-person instructional model.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. In reference to a school calendar, is one available online?
The current school calendar is available. However, tonight we are asking the board to modify that calendar. We are looking, because of the factors that I just shared with you about teacher prep time, we are looking to modify our school calendar so that we front load some of those professional development days that are built into that calendar in the beginning of the school year. So the new calendar will reflect those changes, subject to board approval this evening. Dr. Garman, you want to talk more about what those PD days will look like?
Sure, Dr. Hamilton. So on September 2nd, which will be our convocation, teachers and staff will report to their buildings, and the morning convocation will be virtual, where we'll give an overview and set the standard for the district with our staff. Then teachers will go back, will be in their buildings, and they will start their reentry training. So the reentry training will account for everything in our reopening plan, ranging from how to wear masks, how to wash hands, movement in the buildings, simulated or actual fire drill procedures, anything and everything that we have talked about, arrival and dismissal. So it will be a flurry of re-entry trainings, and we have a couple of ways to deliver that. On Friday, so that was Tuesday convocation, the 2nd. On the 3rd, which is Thursday will be another professional development day. We will start working on creating units of study so people get up and running with Schoology and posting assignments, or preparing to publish and post assignments for kids, to gain access to all of our digital resources and our technology resources, as well as our regular resources. And then Friday, the schools will be closed. The district will still be open. Monday, the 7th, is Labor Day. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we will continue our training throughout the district, and professional development experiences with our teachers to get acclimated with all of our curricular tools, as well as additional reentry training, which is a lot, and that's why we decided to front load it. On the next 2 days, so the 10th and 11th, Thursday the 10th, we'll have an orientation for the hybrid students. The students that come in on Monday and Tuesday will come in on that Thursday and receive a student orientation. And then the students that come in on Thursday and Friday will come in on Friday for another student orientation. And then we'll be off and running on September 14th.
Great. Dr. Gorman or Dr. Hamilton, will students in the remote learning environment have live sessions with their teachers?
Yeah, so Dr. Hamilton alluded to that. It'll be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. Synchronous is sort of like what we're doing right now, Rick. We are live with our audience, so that is synchronized, right? So all teachers will meet with their class in the morning and sort of establish routines on what they're supposed to do. And then students might go off into small groups. They might have different assignments. They might be engaging in the math program for the district, or the history program, or the science program, or whatever classes they're taking. Then they may meet back. They might meet as a whole group or a small group. There might be a mini lesson. And there'll be a wide range of a combination of synchronous and asynchronous lessons that will be engaged with the teacher throughout. And we're going to keep basically normal school hours, and we will build in breaks. Yesterday, we shared a sample remote schedule on what it might look like. And so as we get tighter with our procedures, with our principals and our teachers, we will get very specific with the times of those periods and the lessons.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. A lot of parents are concerned about face coverings and face masks. What face coverings will be acceptable for students, teachers, and staff as they begin to return?
So ideally, we want our students to wear and staff to wear 3-layer. That's what's recommended by the CDC, to wear 3-layer masks. But any face covering, any appropriate face covering is certainly acceptable. And the ideal face covering, of course, if you're not able to access or get a hold of a 3-layer like the N95 mask, for instance, and they may be on back order in some places. We do have a cadre, some masks available for a cadre of our staff members who may be needing them. But parents are encouraged, if you can't get the 3-layer, to buy appropriate cloth face coverings that you can launder appropriately to make sure that they remain clean. And it's a good idea to send students to school with several masks, and even if they drop them or they become soiled during the course of the day. So when you would normally get the list from your child's teacher about bring a package of tissue and bring some whatever else is in there, pencils or loose leaf binders, that list will now include bring masks with you, hand sanitizers, bottled water, things of that sort.
And Dr. Hamilton, will there be face masks available at school for children if they forget it or if they lose it throughout the day?
We will have some available, but it is important for parents to understand their responsibility in sending students to school with face masks or covering.
There's lots of concerns about building sanitization and cleanliness. What is going to be done to address the sanitization of bathrooms? And will someone be available to monitor the uses and clean those bathrooms after each use?
Absolutely. So we have put protocols in place to make sure that there is some control over how many students are being allowed in the bathroom. So we will be assigning security monitors and or teachers or assistants to duties to monitor bathroom and hallway traffic. And bathrooms will be cleaned as often as necessary, but no less than every 2 hours based on the traffic and usage of those bathrooms.
For those students who've elected to go all virtual, will there be an opportunity for them to meet their teacher in person at some point in the fall?
Yes, we are scheduling a student orientation day, and that will be contingent upon the approval of the modified school calendar. But during the student orientation day, that's when teachers will provide this virtual orientation with their class, with their students, where they will review what the schedule will look like, what the expectations will look like. That'll be an opportunity for parents to meet their child's teacher as well, and for that teacher to go over his or her daily routines and classroom expectations.
Excellent. What about virtual clubs or extracurricular activities? Is there any plan to go online with those as well?
Dr. Hamilton, some of the things that come to mind when we reviewed these questions, National Honor Society and National Junior Honor Society, those will definitely be conducted in a virtual environment. Yearbook Club as well. There are definitely some clubs that can meet the standard to meet virtually, and if they can, we will move along that way. And who knows, we might be able to get a little creative. Last year, we had chess clubs, and I know there's a lot of good software where kids can play chess. So we will try to engage kids in virtual clubs after school. I know Dr. Bennett Conroy is planning on moving forward with the Academic Power Hour and some virtual yoga for some of the kids as well. So yes, we plan on continuing our club program after school in a virtual environment when appropriate.
How about teachers? Will they have assistants to aid them in meeting the needs of their students that are split between virtual and distance learning models?
Classrooms that are already assigned TAs based on student need will continue to have those aids if it is student need based, but we are not adding more TAs to classrooms because of COVID or the switch from virtual to distance learning. No.
Are there going to be cameras in classrooms such as pre-K rooms and kindergarten rooms so parents can monitor their children?
No, there will not be.
But Dr. Hamilton, I will tell you, there is a great program that we're using with the little ones in pre-K, K, and 1 called Seesaw. And Seesaw, it really actually kids get to post their work and parents get to comment on it in live time. So that's a really dynamic program that we're very excited about putting forward with our pre-K, K, and first grade kids.
Dr. Gorman, can you go over the protocol for the IT and technology issues that may be experienced by students and parents in the distance learning or hybrid programs? Laptop.
Sure. Sure, Rick. I think we were very successful from March to June last year with technology issues. We have a help desk and a hotline for parents and students to call. In addition, we have dedicated staff in each one of our buildings to handle technology. They're called our links. And so we do have mechanisms to help with technical support and computer support, whatever the issue might be.
Thank you. We talked about an orientation for some of the virtual students, but as many of our parents know, we're bringing online a new elementary school in just a few weeks. What are the plans for an open house or an orientation for those students attending the new elementary school to meet their principal and staff members?
That's a great question. So there is a new principal who started, I guess, about 2 weeks ago now, who will be the principal at the new Mandela building. He is scheduling an open house. I am not certain if that open house is an in-person open house or a virtual one. I suspect it will be virtual, obviously to control the amount of traffic that's in and around the building. But because it is a new building, we're excited about being able to have a ribbon cutting and to showcase the building and how extraordinary the building will be in terms of its accommodation for our students, particularly since it's such an older building and the renovations are quite impressive. So the principal will spearhead that, and we'll give you more information as we get closer to getting our CO or certificate of occupancy when we'll be authorized to open that building.
And I know, Dr. Hamilton, that there are a bunch of other students as well who were rezoned as part of the opening of the Mandela building. Will there be a similar virtual open house or orientation for those students going into new buildings as well?
For students who are going to new buildings, almost all of the transfers are for students who are going from existing buildings into the Nelson Mandela Elementary School. So the previous answer would be applicable to those students as well.
Great. What about for those parents who have signed their students up for their children up for hybrid classes, and we get to September, October, and they don't feel safe or they don't feel it's meeting their needs? Are they going to be able to change from hybrid to remote?
Again, from hybrid to remote, we are almost certain we'll be able to accommodate them. That will, of course, depend on how many students at that juncture are in the hybrid model or in the remote model, because we still want to keep class sizes relative in the remote learning environment. We don't want those classes any larger than they are in what's considered our old normal. So that teachers can be attentive to students and their needs and their development. So to the extent that those numbers are within that range, we will be able to accommodate some of those requests. But I do want to caution parents, if you are thinking about going to total remote, we encourage you to do that now to ensure that there is space so that we don't end up not being able to accommodate your requests later in the year.
And our last question that was left over from yesterday, will teachers provide resources to students in the virtual environment in other languages?
That's a great question. So the same circumstances and criteria that are available to our students, if they are eligible for additional language supports, they will receive those language supports. But if you're in a regular classroom that's conducted in English as the primary language, they will continue to be done in that way. So there are not any multilingual courses or classes available, with the exception of those students who are eligible for ENL services, English as a second language instruction.
Thank you.
Hamilton, I will add that there are some really great technologies that help with translations, like immersive readers that we were trained on a little bit in the summer through Avid training, and some of our other programs in school that you're able to translate for students, as well as our tech books and some of our other online digital products.
Dr. Hamilton, I'm monitoring the feed, and one of the questions coming in is from one of our parents that has a 6-year-old, and she's an essential worker herself as a mom, and she wants to know what time will work need to be submitted by in order for her daughter to receive credit for that work. In her schedule, she's going to have to do a lot of that work after traditional school hours with her daughter to make sure it gets done.
That's a great question. We understand that there's got to be some degree of flexibility in this environment for students to submit their work. So while the teachers may not be online after 3 o'clock, and many of them are, frankly, but if parents need to complete that work later and submit it the following day, that's perfectly fine. We understand that parents will need to be able to help students after their work day, particularly for our younger learners, in order for them to get the full benefit of instruction.
Excellent. Will Benjamin Turner Middle School reopen and do social distancing?
Yes.
What about the district has made an effort to provide iPads to students? Will those have Wi-Fi or cellular data connections so parents can have access to the Wi-Fi from home? And what is the
They definitely don't have cellular data. Those are much more expensive devices. But one of the things that we definitely are working with our families is to make sure that they do have internet connection and the possibility of getting them MiFi units. We're helping connect them with other providers that might have promotions is part of what we're doing to ensure that all kids have access to the digital tools we have on the internet.
So there's a question here from Miss Brown. She said, we offer some suggestions on visual aids that parents could put up to help their little ones at home. And I think that goes to a broader question is, we've talked a lot about what the school can do for the students. What can parents do for their children in this environment to make them more successful in the hybrid model and learning at home?
So I appreciate you asking that. So we are putting together a parent academy that will walk parents through how to support students in this environment, how to be partners in the educational process. I actually received from Dr. BC's office the content that workshop will cover, and I will approve that probably tomorrow, and we will get those dates out to parents. But it'll walk you through making sure that there is a structure in place so that students have specific rituals and routines around when they log on and how they interact with their teachers. Make sure that you are providing opportunities for students to interact with one another as appropriate in this environment, making sure that you know which resources are available to supplement. We know that a lot of times our students are learning information that is very different than the way we learned information when we were in school. So we are providing those resources to parents so that they can put in the work as well, so that they will be able to provide that one-on-one instruction to their children at home. But that's a great question, and I think you will find this parent university to be hugely helpful. When we rolled this out in March, this was just kind of thrust upon us, if you will, and we didn't have the luxury. And I heard from parents who were telling me, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this work. This is overwhelming. And so that's why we came up with the Parent Academy. We have a little more time now to try to plan that and to be responsive to what some of those needs were as they were expressed to me during the March to June period. And I would be really, really encouraging parents to take full advantage of that. It's free. It will be conducted by experts in our district, trainers that are already in district, and service providers that are available to us. And you will find that it will guide you through a process that should be beneficial to you and relieve a lot of the stress associated with trying to work full-time at home and provide support to students as well as while you try to be a home teacher.
Dr. Hamilton, I was checking out some of those offerings. There's some pretty dynamic ones like positive family communication and discipline, Let's talk this out, understanding teenage language and culture, the ABCs of social media, understanding communication technologies, texting, social media platforms, academic literacy, math, critical thinking, critical skills at any age for college, career, and beyond. And creating rituals and routines for academic success at any age. So in addition to all of those basics that you talked about, like what will teaching, learning, and leadership look like in September, and what's all the fuss about information for families to support virtual learning, it looks like we're really doing, it seems like a great menu of choices for parents to continually work with their families to help guide household procedures and really get immersed in the learning process.
Yeah, it is a very robust offering.
Dr. Hamilton, you've referenced school supply lists. A lot of times parents want some kind of concrete list. Do you know when those might be going out from the individual schools?
I know some teachers are already working on theirs, but again, teachers are not back until September, what's the date? 1st, 3rd?
Second.
Second. So you should probably should not expect an official list until that time. Of course, there are many teachers who are already working and doing their planning and will send those lists out before then. And I know, not getting it until September 2nd when school will be starting shortly thereafter is not very helpful. But you have to also know that a lot of this is new to our teachers as they try to plan and make appropriate accommodations as well. That list will not be as exhaustive as it normally is because there are many things that in this environment students will not need, but there are also some new things students will need, like as I mentioned before, like hand sanitizer, water, things of that sort.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Some concerns on Facebook as well are coming out about high school schedules, when students should expect to receive those.
That's a great question. And those schedules, I would expect that those schedules, based on courses that students have selected, should be forthcoming very, very soon. In fact, I would think that some of them would be out already. Dr. Gorman, do you have any more information on that?
No, we're working with schools because they're actually the high schools we've talked about is a little bit trickier as far as social distancing and movement with students. So the schools are reviewing all of their practices on movements. For the most part, schedules are secure, but I do not have a release time today for schedules. Maybe we could come back later this week and lock that down.
Okay.
Dr. Hamilton, has there been any consideration given for some maybe flex scheduling, some teachers for those students who might not be able to log on for synchronous learning during the traditional school day?
That would be something we would have to negotiate. I think it's a great idea, frankly. It is not something that is available in our current agreement with our teachers union. But I would be very open to making those kinds of accommodations if the union wanted to engage in that conversation. I think that's a great idea for parents who, and not only that, even some students shared with me that some of them weren't really able to log on until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. And so I would be very open to that. Right now, we do not have that mechanism in place.
Can you once again just touch a little bit, these questions come up about how attendance will be taken. Is it going to be daily? Will it be based on assignments? What are we doing to track these students?
Attendance will be taken daily. Schoology, which is the system we use for student assignments and student and teacher engagement. Students will log on to Schoology. If they are in the remote environment, of course, if they're in person, it'll be the manual process that we've traditionally used. But attendance is very important. It's important that students log on to Schoology, and that's how their attendance will be taken.
Yeah, in addition, Dr. Hamilton, they'll have those morning meetings where they'll be checking in and teachers will ensure that the kids are showing up and they're present to start the school day.
Could you guys also review what Wellness Wednesday will be like and how that's going to impact the students' instructional program?
So for the most part, we've dedicated extensive time for teachers to really dig into the planning and making sure that our kids are okay and that they're connected. One of the lessons we learned last year was that even though kids had access to Schoology and had logged in, they weren't showing up every day for school. So it's very important that teachers and buildings and working with administration and support staff are checking in with kids that are not present on a daily basis. We learned so much about mental health and social and emotional learning last year that it's very important for us to provide resources and check in with our students. So part of the day on Wednesdays, students will be engaged in different learning assignments. They might have to read a book, they might have to watch a video, they might have to write a paper, they might have to do some math problems, they might have to create a project in social studies or science. And so the Wednesdays will be assignment driven for the most part for the kids. However, teachers will be working on planning for the next week, tracking down and connecting with families and students that are not in regular attendance or something might be awry. They'll also have time for their own professional learning part of the day and for looking at assessment data to make sure that they're guiding and driving instruction appropriately.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Dr. Hamilton, can you just touch upon why the district is going through a rezoning process and how Mandela, the new Mandela Zollicoffer building figures into that process, into the rezoning effort?
Sure. So we've had, going back to the 2020 vision that was put in place back in 2016, and that a lot of that work was done by research that was done in the district prior to my arrival. The parents, the community wanted neighborhood schools. They wanted schools that went from K through 8, thereby eliminating the middle school concept. And we had many of our elementary schools were in fact overcrowded, using classroom space that was not designed to be classroom space, like stages, some classrooms in the hallway, small group instruction that was conducted in office space, in some cases even closets. So to alleviate the overcrowding issue at many of our elementary buildings, we decided to bring on board a new elementary school that would take some of the enrollment pressures off of elementary schools. We also have trailers or temporary classroom modules in the district, which is not ideal. They're energy hogs, they're not cost efficient, and they're eyesore, frankly. So we want to access or get rid of those trailers as well. And so by bringing Mandela online, we are able to address what the community told us that they wanted through this research that was done, and to take the pressure off of the elementary schools where the classrooms were bursting at the seams because of numbers. We also know that there is new construction, new housing going up in Mount Vernon, and we know that those housing units are going to bring more children into our district. Now, it is not necessarily a one-for-one, meaning if there are 100 new models, 100 apartments made available, that 100 new students are going to move into the district. We know some students are going to move from one place to the other. So we have growth space available in the Mandela building, but that is why we've added another elementary school on our school inventory.
Excellent. A lot of parents were elated in the spring when the state canceled some of the state tests and other assessments were canceled. Do we have any plans to cancel those tests in the new school year, Dr. Hamilton?
That's not something that's within our authority to do. That is a state edict that will either suspend state testing or continue with the implementation of state testing in the spring. It is my understanding at this juncture that the state plans to suspend standardized testing again this year, but I have not received official notification of that yet.
Dr. Hamilton, we will be using our own assessments. Like we will be back to our beginning of the year iReady. We're blocking out a couple of weeks. It's really important that we get our own assessments on students so we could continue to provide the right instruction for the kids and see if there were learning gaps and where they were and what we need to really focus in on our students. So that's an important piece. And we'll go through, procedures that we don't want the parents helping the kids. We want a true assessment of the kids.
Dr. Gorman, I'm glad you brought up assessments. AVID has been an exceptional tool that the district has used in terms of raising rigor and making sure our students have the tools necessary. how will Avid tutorials be conducted in the face of the pandemic?
So we're really excited about all the training we received in the summer virtually from Avid. We had over 150 teachers attending a 3-day digital XP training, and even an Avid Discover training. The tutorology, Rick, it'll actually be, it could be better than face-to-face, because the concept of the tutorology is that kids define where they get stuck, and they fill out something called a tutorial referral form, based off of their places where they have problems. And we will now have the ability to have our college tutors and our tutors to zoom into multiple classrooms to help with this process through breakout rooms, through video conferencing breakout rooms. So you could get really an intimate group working on just common math problems or common science problems, which we know are always barriers for some of our students when it comes to those advanced and higher level classes. So we're excited about the tutorology. The possibilities in a virtual environment are actually more plentiful than they are in a physical environment.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. There's a number of questions again coming up on Facebook about when students will be notified who their teachers are, the programs. You want to just touch, guys, a little bit on the complicated algorithms that we need to use this year in order to schedule these buildings, and what the delays are right now?
A big part of it is the survey data. We have made all kinds of efforts to get everyone to complete the survey so that we know how to effectively schedule the buildings. So at this point, we've received, I guess, about 60% of our surveys, which means we still have about 40% to go. And that's important information to have. So we are now reaching out, schools are contacting parents by telephone to get them to complete those surveys. The reason the survey is important as it relates to that question is we have to know how many children we are scheduling in the remote environment and how many are being scheduled in the hybrid model. And without that data, it's impossible for us to do that. So that's why we're a little behind. Now, teachers have their class lists based on what we knew and expected school to look like when the semester ended in June. But of course, that has changed dramatically now because we have this guidance from our state about how we need to proceed moving forward, and the fact that we will not be in a traditional model. Those class rosters that were created in June were created based on an assumption that we would be back, even though we knew it wasn't likely at that time, but it was based on what we knew and believed to be our reality and being back in our old traditional model. So that's why the class lists have not been shared yet, because they are still being revised as it relates to what parents have provided to us. We are reasonably certain that we will be able to accommodate the requests parents have made. So if you've requested Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, we're reasonably sure we'll be able to accommodate that. However, if we find that, say, 80% of our parents have requested Monday, Tuesday, and only 20% requested Thursday, Friday model, we may have to modify that to some extent, obviously, because that just will not work in terms of balance and equity and distribution of students and teacher class sizes. So that's why this process is so complicated. And I can appreciate parents' frustration with this, but I hope you also understand that we are getting new information every day, and this is requiring that we work differently as well as we create new processes and protocols along the way.
You know, Dr. Hamilton, this is really an equity issue also. You know, one of, on your signature, you also often refer to all kids mean all kids. So it's easy for the people that know about our Facebook Live and know about our communications and can access them. Like everybody asking us questions today, they've filled out our surveys. But those other kids that aren't easily accessible and don't have those means, those are the ones that we are really trying to get to. It would be very easy for us to just shut the survey and then drop everybody back into hybrid if they didn't answer the survey. but that's not really servicing all of our kids and meeting the needs of the families. So I think that's why one of the reasons that we really are extending it and trying to do everything possible to outreach to families of all kids in our district.
That's an important piece. We're probably being, well, I know we're being more accommodating than many of our surrounding districts by giving parents this option. Most other districts are putting people in where they fit and trying to be as flexible and as collaborative as possible. And that may be to our disadvantage in some regard because parents are requesting information that we can't give them right now. I do want to go back to an earlier question because while we were talking, I text the high school principals and the student schedules are done and students should begin to receive. Some students have already gotten them, but students who have not should expect those schedules to be coming out any day now because they are complete.
Dr. Hamilton, can you talk about the isolation room again and how that's going to work? When a student goes there, what happens when they go there?
So I'm glad you brought that up. So I want to preface that by saying it is so important that parents understand we do not want students in this isolation room for long periods of time. I realize people have to work, but if students become symptomatic, they will be sent to the isolation room and parents will need to come and pick them up so that they're not there all day or for extended periods of time. The isolation room is separate from the nurse's office. The nurse's office is obviously there for students who have scrapes and bruises, who don't feel well, or who have a headache. Those normal things that the nurse's office manages on a day-to-day basis. The isolation room is for students who display symptoms consistent with COVID. They're running a temperature, or they start running a temperature during the course of the day, or they have other symptoms that are outlined to be COVID related. And there will be a combination of those symptoms because obviously there are some symptoms that are COVID related that are related to regular seasonal allergies or the regular cold or flu. But if it is determined by the nurse that a student needs to go in the isolation room, they will go to this room where they will be in isolation from other students. And to the extent that there's more than one student in there, obviously the room will be set up so that social distancing is a practice that is honored in that environment until students can be picked up. Students that are sent to the isolation room will need to be seen by a physician and come back to school with a positive, a test indicating that they are not COVID positive or a negative COVID test so that they can be readmitted.
Dr. Hamilton, I think our reopening plan talks about 2 tests spaced out 24 hours apart. So it's not, we are strictly responding to CDC recommendations, and all that's in our reopening plan. It really talks about re-entering.
That's where I was getting ready to go. If you go to our district reopening plan and look specifically on the section that speaks to the isolation room or student exclusion, it tells you specifically what that timetable is for when students will be able to be readmitted and the 2 tests that need to be conducted. We are looking to partner with a local center. Of course, if you have your physician that you want to use, you're certainly welcome to do that. But we're looking to partner with a local vendor who will be able to conduct those tests for us. I understand that they're actually ordering the rapid test. Now, I don't know how reliable the rapid test is, and I'm not an expert and I'm not a scientist. But I understand that they are getting that rapid test in their inventory, and they may be able to offer that to our students and families. I will be meeting with them this week. I was actually supposed to meet with them today, but it got rescheduled. And once we finalize that relationship, I'll be able to share that with you so you know where you can take your children if you need to for a COVID test, if your physician or pediatrician isn't available or offering that.
Dr. Hamilton, will the district be providing transportation to high school students, either at Mount Vernon High School or the STEAM Academy?
Say that again,
transportation for high school students.
No, we do not provide transportation to students There are some students at Mount Vernon High School who get a discount or student passes for the Beeline. There are discounts available, but that is not a district expense. That's a parent expense. The district does not have a fleet of school buses or transportation fleet at our disposal, other than students who have an IEP. Now, if the student is a special needs student or has an individualized education plan that requires transportation, then of course we will still comply with that mandate as outlined in the IEP.
As I'm looking at the time and we need to wrap up shortly, I know that in the spring, the district gave out a number of digital devices to the students, and we're gearing up for that. What do parents do in order to return the ones that they had from the spring to have them updated and set up for the fall? And when should parents expect information about the issuance of new devices?
I'm gonna take a part of that, and I'm gonna let Dr. Gorman answer the other part of that. We are very pleased that we will be able to offer every student a device. In the spring, we were struggling to get one in every family, and that worked out well in the beginning, but became problematic later on, particularly when there were multiple children in the same household, or if there was only one device and mom or dad needed it for work, and students needed it for schoolwork. Students were emailing me and writing and calling me saying, I can't get on to do my work until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So we have really been working with some of our partners, including the Mount Vernon Educational Foundation, our teachers union, and other entities to help build our inventory with devices. So we will have devices available for every student in the fall. The challenge that we have is when these devices will come in. Our order has been placed, but as you can imagine, every school district in the country is ordering laptops or iPads or both right now. So that shipment could come in pieces versus one large shipment at any one particular time. So we will schedule our distributions according to the arrival of these devices, but we will be able to get a device in the hand of every child this fall.
I know, Rick, that we're not necessarily asking for the other ones back right now. We want to keep we want our families to have them. And then part of the protocol is for kids to bring those laptops to school, because a lot of our curriculum is really moving digitally. And even though kids are face-to-face, they might be working on different assignments as the teacher structures her class for the day. So we would do updates and any upgrades that were necessary when those laptop devices come to school, or we'll be able to push out because we've moved our district to a cloud-based system, which is really helpful as well. So stay tuned. Like Dr. Hamilton said, it is a really challenging process for us to ramp up these computers, get it prepared for our students and parents and distributed as soon as possible, like Dr. Hamilton said. But it is it's a heavy lift for us on our end with everything else as well.
Mr. McCormick, give me a sense of what the traffic is like on Facebook. How many questions are we not answering? I don't want anyone to feel like we're rushing through this process. If we need to go a little longer, I'm fine with that. But I want to get a sense of how many people are on and what the questions are like.
We have 205 viewers at the moment. And we certainly have some more questions. We can continue on if you'd like. We have a question here from Miss Pearl. She said that she was told that she could purchase a discounted Metro card for her child's school, but with COVID, how will that work? Does she have to contact the school directly, or does she just get the Metro card from the MTA?
I'm not sure how the Metro cards work, honestly, and I don't want to give out misinformation. I really am not sure, but I can tell you who you can contact. You can contact Mr. Michael Policcio, who oversees our transportation department, and he will be able to guide you. And Mr. Policcio can be reached at 914-665-5190. That's 914-665-5190.
Another question that keeps coming up, and I think it's worth repeating. Could somebody just give an overview of what a virtual learning day would look like for those students who have gone remotely? Will they sign in in the morning at the same time?
Sure, I'll give that a shot. So once we'd established that schedule, and we have committees of administrators working on that, kids will be required to meet with their class in the morning for a morning meeting at a certain time, synchronously or through video conferencing. And then we will set like an hour for ELA, a break, an hour for another subject, or whatever the time periods might be, keeping towards our contracts. So, teacher contracts have to be maintained during this environment as well. So class periods will resemble they will parallel a lot of what we see in schools when we're all face to face, and it will be conducted more or less like a school day. It would be nice to say, okay, go get your lunch and we'll see you back in 40 minutes. That'll be a much easier process than face to face. But it will mimic, the virtual day will mimic in a lot of ways the regular school days.
So we're taking all this information into consideration. We are really learning from a lot of your questions. As robust and as detailed as our opening plan may be, many questions that we've received from our parents, our staff, and our board trustees have given us more things to think about and contemplate. And some of those things, as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, some of those things we don't have answers to, quite frankly. And we're looking at all of that. We're looking at what is the best way to ensure that we are keeping staff and students as safe as possible. But I cannot tell you that we will be able to control every possible variable that impacts our students and the health and safety of everyone that we are responsible for. This partnership between school and home is essential so that we understand what your needs are, what we can accommodate, but we need you to also understand that there is a huge parent part in this in order for this to make sense. At the end of the day, we've provided these options for you because you know your circumstances better than we do. And based on that, we will try to make every possible accommodation, and to the extent that we can, we will. But do know that we don't have all the answers. There are so many moving parts to this, and some of your questions has opened doors that we didn't think about, quite frankly. So continue to send your questions. And again, Dr. Gorman and I, along with Rick and Mike Beater, our PR person, we're looking through those questions and we're finding patterns and trends that we're responding to and posting them on the district website. As you can see, those FAQs have grown tremendously over the last several days because of the questions you're presenting. Even those of you who have sent me emails, I've tried to respond to every single one of your emails in order to ensure that your voice is being heard. So I thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your engagement, and I appreciate this partnership. We don't have all the answers. I just want to say that again. We do not have all the answers, but we all have the same thing in mind. We want to educate our children. We want to make sure that our children are learning in the best way possible. We are simultaneously raising expectations and increasing rigor, and we want people to be safe. I want students to be safe. I want staff to be safe, and I want to be safe. So with that in mind, we are back on tomorrow. What time are we scheduled for tomorrow, Rick?
I think it's a late one tomorrow. I think it's 6. 5 to 6. Rick, you're muted.
Yeah, 6 p.m., sir.
6 p.m.
Okay, so we're back on tomorrow at 6 p.m. If your question hasn't been answered, or if you haven't heard the information that you need to hear in order to make an informed decision, jump back on tomorrow at 6 and we'll be here again trying to get through as many as we can. So thank you very much for your time. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this evening. Have a good night, be safe, and know that I'm praying for you every day.
We'll see you at a board meeting in a couple hours, Dr. Hamilton.
Yep, see you in a bit.
All right, take care. Good night.